Hey fellas, what's up? It is Gun Thug here. I'm going to be doing a little commentary today on a PSL match that happened earlier, much earlier. I was not awake for this sadly, but it's a Gen 4 OU match between the Raging Lions and UFO, Greg's team, the Unidentified Flying Artillery. And we got two good players here. We got Spaintakula, who, as we all know, I'm sure, went undefeated last year in Diamond Platinum Pearl. He even beat me in the playoffs with a team that's you're going to see is pretty similar to the one he's going to use today. And on the other side, we have CaptainAwesome, who is an underrated showdown player for sure. He didn't go for too many credits, but I know he can play. Last season, we were on the same team, and when I needed sparring for my Gen 4 OU matches, he was always there with solid teams to challenge me. So I knew as soon as I saw this week, the lineups, I knew we were going to have a good one here, and it did not disappoint. So let's get right into it. We got Uxie versus Hippo lead here. Uxie's an interesting lead. You don't see it all that often, and I know Spaint likes to use it because I think you'd certainly see Azelf, that one of the sisters of those three, Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie. You see Azelf more because it's faster, it's got access to taunt, it's very powerful, and so it's a good suicide lead, but Uxie's more for support throughout the match, and Spain knows that, and he usually takes advantage of that. I could tell as soon as I was watching this through the first time that this was going to be his Yawn Uxie, which makes switching in an absolute nightmare because you don't like for anything to get put to sleep. Yawn can play mind games with someone and cause them to reveal more of their team than they otherwise would, so they're going to go ahead and trade rocks here on turn one. Nothing spectacular. Hippo, I can't say enough about Hippo as a lead. It's extremely reliable as a rock setter. Almost nothing can one-hit KO it. It can obviously be taunted, but it has decent coverage. Cresselia comes in here on Uxie, and I think this is interesting to note that you'll see this Cresselia is not running leftovers. And that's the first thing that kind of struck me is, I'm almost, you almost always see Cresselia running lefties because it's almost always in that bulky role, a bulky pivot, especially early in the match. So it's not running leftovers. So I thought that was kind of strange, but I guess he wanted it to soak up the yawn. And Uxie's going to bounce out on this Toxic and go into a Flygon. At this point, we have no way of knowing what kind of Flygon this is. He's got to be at least a little frightened here that we immediately see this Cresselia is rocking a Chesto Berry. So immediately I'm thinking Calm Mind, Chesto Rest, Cresselia, setup Cresselia. At that point, is it going to have Ice Beam? That's the question Spain needs to be asking. So I think the obvious play here is going to be to bounce out with a U-turn on Flygon, and Captain's going to let him get a little free scouting here with this U-turn. This is such a great move. It's one of the reasons I love Diamond Platinum Pro, because you see games just kind of ushered along a little bit by this momentum. You can keep momentum with U-turn, you can gain momentum with U-turn, you can lose momentum with U-turn if, I don't know how you could lose momentum with U-turn, but it just sounded good with the other two. We see Tentacruel here come in, very common spinner in DPP, very solid and a pretty hard check to to Suicune. It's also a pretty decent defensive check to Sizer, especially if it's defensively invested. So we see on the knockoff here that Sizer is slow. It's obviously not a Scarfer, it would have outsped. And it gets its band knocked off. And at this point I'm thinking, wow, so he was coming in on a Tentacruel with a choice banded Sizer, I guess supposedly to keep momentum and U-turn out. He's going to get very fortunate here to get the critical hit on the U-turn because remember, this is 2 times the damage on critical hits. It's not like MMO where we have updated mechanics. So he gets the double damage U-turn, which also I believe ignores, he hadn't had a attack drop, so he's going to go back to Flygon and obviously threaten with pretty much any coverage move that Flygon might have an Earthquake. Now, it's interesting to note that we still aren't 100% sure this is Scarf Flygon. I've seen Expert Belt sets that bluff the choice. I've seen banded Flygon sets, and it hasn't had to outspeed anything yet. So I'm going to assume it's Scarf. It's the most common set, and it's often paired with banded Sizer. So he can probably kill Tentacruel with any number of his coverage moves. He's going to, I believe, U-turn out again here. No, he's going to Earthquake, which is a risky move. When you've only seen 3 of your opponent's Pokemon, it is extremely risky to lock yourself in an Earthquake, which can maybe give you a hint. Maybe it wasn't a choice Flygon. Regardless, Hippodon's going to scare it out, as it often does. So he's going to go back to Uxie because, you know, generally when you see a Hippo, you have to assume that it's running Earthquake. We know it's running Stealth Rock. We know it's running Toxic. And more likely it's running Slack Off. So, man, did it used Toxic on Uxie, so I guess it does only have, it might not be running Earthquake at all. Oh, no, it's definitely running Earthquake. I'm confusing myself here because I've seen this match once and I can't remember what happened, so we'll just see what happens. We see a very interesting move here, and I want to talk about this. Cresselia uses Recycle to get that. Let's go back and see that again because that's important. Hippo here, Hippo's going to double switch back out to Cresselia, I guess expecting the Uxie switch, which was smart. So now remember, we have a Cresselia that's already used its Chesto Berry, and so Uxie's going to feel pretty confident in yawning here and putting it to sleep. So we see it immediately recycle that Chesto Berry, which means that this yawn right here seems to be in vain, right? And we've got a 50% health Cresselia. It's drowsy, but as soon as it falls asleep, that Chesto Berry is going to wake it back up. So what does he do at that momentum? He's going to rest. He's going to burn the Chesto Berry. He apparently, and I didn't know this either, so I certainly can't blame him, but apparently resting does not get rid of your drowsiness. So he's going to fall right back asleep. And now that he's used his Chesto Berry, he is allowing Spain to get the momentum back. He got his rocks up for free. He's going to U-turn out, which does nominal damage to Cresselia, but the fact is he's going to get Lucario in here on a sleeping Cresselia and be able to set up. And that's what we're going to see him do right away. Most of the time when you see Lucario, you can safely assume it's going to be a Swords Dance Life Orb set, but and this one was no different. This is a very interesting play I want to talk about. So he's got Flygon in at 95% health, and he's at +2 with Lucario. Now we know Lucario carries Extreme Speed, which is a +2 priority move that does 80 damage, neutral damage, and it's going to take out a lot of frail Pokemon that would otherwise check it, like Scarf Flygon. He could have stayed in there. In fact, I have the calc pulled up because I thought it was important. Lucario is going to do 88 to 104% damage. I mean, the vast majority of the time, it's going to knock out a Flygon at 95%, which is how much it had done after Stealth Rock. So if I throw Stealth Rock up on this side of the, or on this side of the field, we're going to see even at 100%. Well, so he had a 62.5% chance to kill. And that is assuming it's Life Orb, which I believe we will confirm later. But at this point, you know, he was definitely playing it safe there. I think if you can take out, if you have a chance to take out Scarf Flygon that early in a match when you haven't, you know, taken out anything else, I think I would have taken it. But again, you know, he felt confident switching to Staraptor, which is going to not only take his attack down, but it was pretty easy to Earthquake there for him too. I mean, at that point, let's see, we had seen Lucario, Sizer. He was I mean, he could have gone to Flygon there, which has full health. And then Uxie also had about 50% health. So the Earthquake wasn't guaranteed there. I might have been worried about taking an Outrage. Even a -1 Flygon Outrage is going to hurt this star pretty bad. So after Stealth Rock damage. So, you know, kind of an interesting move there, but we press onwards. We get a Rotom here. And we see the momentum team here by Spaint. He's really, you know, rocking 3 U-turn users and just trying to get his sweepers in, his Suicune and his Lucario in at the best possible time to wreak havoc. We see here that maybe this wasn't Scarf Flygon because it takes out with Outrage that Heatran. And it's got to be Scarf because that's not banded damage on Hippo. Hippo's fat, don't get me wrong, but that's not banded damage on Hippo, so Hippo's going to heal back up to full, and this was another interesting choice, you know, given what you're about to see. So I'm just going to go back one turn. He's going to Outrage here into Hippo. Hippo's going to heal back to full health, okay? And then this is when the Outrage ends. It was only a 2-turn Outrage. So right now we have a confused Flygon against the Hippo. We know the Flygon is likely locked into Outrage, so the only thing that it can do is Outrage again. We know it's not going to do all that much damage. So if Captain wants to take advantage of this, his best bet is probably to go to something that can abuse the locked into the Outrage lock. Maybe a sleeping Cresselia, try to get Cresselia back to being awoken, or stay in with Hippo and maybe Toxic the Flygon, or some sort of way to take this Flygon out and take advantage of the fact that it's locked in. What he does instead is he goes to Tentacruel, which is barely, I mean, I don't know, with 7%, you never know. It may not have survived the Sandstorm tick at all. So, you know, I don't agree with that move. I think Tenno was probably dead meat anyways. I don't see it getting a spin off or anything. I suppose he was just sacking it, which, you know, in the long run, we'll see. It didn't end up mattering all that much. It was just something that kind of caught me off guard when I saw it. So we'll get back into it. Flygon's going to hurt himself. That didn't matter. And what do you know? The Hippo is rocking Ice Fang. Now, I don't understand why you wouldn't Ice Fang there before you sack your Tentacruel. That Tentacruel may be something, a sack fodder for later that may be useful. I don't know. So he's going to let Suicune going to come in for free. And it's interesting to note about the Suicune, we've seen it before already, but at this point we know that it's a Life Orb sweeper, not your Crocoon, not your Calm Mind, Surf, Rest, Sleep Talk set. And so we know it has the coverage to hit other things. We know it's going to hit hard even without a boost. It did 25% to Cresselia. Is no laughing matter when that thing has the astronomical bulk that it has. So this is almost a little setup bait right here when Captain brings Cresselia in. When you bring in a sleeping Pokemon, especially one that hasn't rested, it was just put to sleep. You never know how much setup they're going to get off. Luckily, he knew that he had Sand and Life Orb working for him. So Suicune's longevity is not going to be all too much greater in this match, especially when faced against Scarf Flygon. Now from here, U-turn's probably going to kill Suicune unless it's fully max HP, max defense. But regardless, Suicune's only going to be able to kill whatever comes in. So I think at this point, Spain's thinking to himself, oh geez, all right, I have nothing on my team that can kill this Hippo down except for the Suicune. And I think Captain needs to be thinking that too. So he's going to try to preserve Suicune for later in the match. He's going to bring in Sizer, which isn't really threatened by any of Flygon's moves unless he's running Fire Punch. He's got Sizer in there now for Hippo, which, as we know, does not really care about physical attacks. I mean, it took nothing from those outrages from Flygon earlier. And we know that the Sizer has lost its band anyways. So, back to Uxie here for Flygon. It's going to Earthquake, which it doesn't hit, but it doesn't really matter. The chip damage on Uxie is going to be bad for Spaint anyways. And it's going to drop a Yawn again. Now, this is an important Yawn because it's going to force him out after this turn. I mean, he knows that this Hippo is going to be devastating for his team. It takes on pretty much everyone but the very low health Suicune. And so he's going to switch it out to preserve its health. He's going to go to Flygon. Not much the Uxie could have done there. I think it was the right call. Maybe U-turned instead of just going straight to Sizer. But he does ferret out a choice-locked Flygon now. Excuse me. He ferrets out the choice-locked Flygon into Fire Blast. So he brings in Staraptor. Remember, Staraptor is low on health here. There's a pretty good chance that the Staraptor is Scarfed, which would mean it'd be a speed tie with Flygon unless he's using Adamant Scarf Flygon, which, by the way, I always use. I think it's better. I think you're not missing out on much by going Adamant instead of Jolly. You're still going to outspeed the vast majority of the threats that you want to outspeed, and the added power on the Outrage is just absolutely pivotal. But he's going out. He's not going to risk it. He's going to Hippo, which, as we know, can sponge physical attacks. Look at that. Look at this take 30% from a Brave Bird. I mean, that is just, you know, you love that bulk. So we got a 26% Staraptor here. And that's something definitely interesting to note. I mean, that Staraptor is going to come in one more time after a kill, and it only gets one shot. Because the recoil and the sand will kill it. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Hippo's going to go ahead and heal back to full. Okay. The Bullet Punch from Sizer is just going to tick it. I mean, he was basically sacking Sizer at this point because he knows that his only real shot here is to get Suicune in. Now, Suicune, with 3% health left, gets one more smack at this, okay? And we'll see what happens. And this was obviously the pivotal point, the controversial point of the match. Let's see what happens. We're going to see an Ice Beam take 76% health away from Hippo, and it's going to freeze it. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, why did he Ice Beam? You know, why didn't he Surf? Maybe he was expecting a Flygon switch, but obviously a Surf kills Hippo there. I think the smart play there is to Surf your Life Orb. You know, you're heavily invested in special attack. That Surf's going to hurt anything. It's going to kill Hippo, okay? So at this point, instead of Surfing, he Ice Beams. Hippo's frozen, and this is the perfect opportunity. Spain decides to come set up his Lucario, and we'll see that he does indeed get a Sword Stance off. and that 20% thaw chance lets Captain down. So he's going to then go ahead and crunch here, probably worrying about what that last is in case it's a ghost or something that would resist fighting. Flygon comes in here, and as we know from our calc earlier, Flygon's swept away by extreme speed here. Maybe this Flygon should have already been gone. I certainly think so, but at this point there's no risk to it. And then you're going to see here that the last was a Weavile the whole time. Maybe a Swords Dance. That's the kind of Weavile you'd expect to see saved to the end. And Lucario makes quick work of that. So Spain takes the match. Let's talk very briefly about the frozen hippo situation. If we go back just a few turns, and Suicune were to surf here instead of Ice Beam. Hippo's dead, Suicune's dead. You're almost positive that Captain's going to bring in Flygon because he hasn't revealed Weavile yet, and Weavile doesn't do spectacular against Lucario. Sure, it can take down Staraptor, but it'll also take the Intimidate from Staraptor, which he doesn't want to do. So you're almost positive he's going to bring in Flygon, okay? Flygon comes in, Staraptor comes in, and takes down Flygon's attack. Now, at this point, Captain's got an option with Flygon. He can U-turn to kill the Staraptor. He can Fire Blast to kill the Staraptor, but that's obviously risky with misses. He can Earthquake and know that the sand damage is going to take Staraptor out, or he can just go for the Speed Tie and go for an Outrage or something like that. Regardless of which one of those he chooses, I am pretty sure Lucario is going to get a chance to set up no matter what. If he U-turns, which I think is what he would likely do, he would U-turn to Weavile. Lucario comes in and more often than not is going to be able to set up on Weavile. Also, if we take away this +2, we're seeing that Extreme Speed's still going to do 44 to 52% to Flygon. This Flygon is at 77%, after another coming in on rocks again. I mean, that's going to be pretty risky. That's going to be pretty close there, even without him having to set up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think the freeze necessarily affected the outcome of the match. The way it happened, I think Spain was probably better off surfing anyways, and if he were to surf and take the hippo down, then I think he manages to set up Lucario and win regardless. So it was a great match, and I certainly enjoyed watching it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my thoughts when I was watching it through, and stay tuned. I'll probably do this for another match. I may do it for my match, I may not. I'm probably pretty biased, but there's some more DPP and ORAS matches this week I wouldn't mind doing some commentary on. So thanks for listening, and I will see you guys next week.